And thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Sumithai Vidal. I'm a senior product manager here at Nava, and I'm working on Nava's open source community engagement reporting tool, which we call OSCER. Today's going to be a little bit different from past demos. Our foundational approach is still the same. We're still working quickly and iteratively to deliver on the most high impact features to make OSCER usable now for HR1 Medicaid work requirements. Our vision, looks to the future as OSCER expands to support more programs like SNAP. And for the content of the demo, we're going to spend less time walking through features we've already completed. We have past demos available in recordings, and OSCER is a working app, and we're going to show you how OSCER solves the specific problems that states have identified. So let's start with what we all know. HR1 requires states to implement Medicaid work requirements by January 1st, 2027. States could implement earlier if they choose to do so. CMS rules are due this June. There are 18.5 million adults subject to work requirements each year. And so that leaves states roughly 10 months to stand up a system that can verify compliance, process exemptions, manage reporting, and do it all without increasing the administrative burden for members and staff. That's just not a lot of runway. So there is an extensive list of exemptions and exclusions that are defined in the HR1 bill. And the challenge for states becomes implementing these policies. So research from CBPP, KFF, and the Urban Institute all point to the same finding. The vast majority of people who lose coverage are actually eligible, they're exempt, or they're already working enough hours. They lose coverage because the process is confusing and there's an increase in, administrative burden, which produces high costs for the state. But, there is good news. CBPP has estimated that roughly 80% of cases could be resolved automatically, but only if states can connect to the right data. The Urban Institute found that 48% of Medicaid expansion adults already meet the requirement through income alone. So if we add in veterans with disabilities, students, caregivers, people with chronic conditions, that number who actually needs to manually report shrinks dramatically. And so the problem is that most state systems weren't built to reach those data sources. They can't connect to VA disability records or student enrollment databases or real-time employment verification. So a path is that instead of resolving cases automatically, they might have to push the burden onto members and staff. And that's when people fall through the cracks. That's the core of what OSCER is trying to solve here. Connect to more data, automate more decisions, and only ask members and staff to act when it's truly necessary. So from our conversations with state leaders, policy experts, and the vendor community, we're seeing some common paths on what states are doing. And they seem to have limited options, and none of them feel great. As a state, you can extend your current vendor contract and ask them to, bolt on the work requirements into a system that you may not be that confident with already. Another option is to build something new. We've heard states thinking about building something on their own, and they've estimated, in the millions for full implementations. And states just aren't in a position to do either. Both are expensive and they take a lot of time. OSCER's this other option, this other alternative. It's an open source application. It sits alongside your existing Medicaid system. We've scoped the MVP to be deployable in 6 to 8 weeks. It's designed specifically for HR1 work requirements. And because it's open source, there are no license fees, no vendor lock-in. You own the code in your own environment. So we call it a sidecar. You don't replace anything. You don't wait for your vendor to build something. You deploy OSCER in your own infrastructure, connect it to your existing data, and can get operational. So at a high level, OSCER does 4 things. It connects to external data sources that your current system may not be able to reach. It automates exemption and compliance checks, so the majority of cases resolve without the manual intervention. For members who do need to take action, it provides, a clear, tested, mobile-friendly experience. And for staff, it provides modern case management tools. Today let's talk at how OSCER is already addressing each of these stages of the funnel, starting with something we haven't seen very many state systems do yet, or just many systems do, which is add external data sources. We're starting with VA disability records, but this sets the pattern to connect to more data sources. This could be data that the Medicaid office already has, or other external data sources that might be sitting with other agencies, as well as like external commercial data sources. So we'll show, what like something that gets at the heart of why OSCER exists. And, under HR1, veterans with 100% VA disability rating are exempt from work requirements. So today, verifying a disability exemption with the VA can take time. It's dependent on additional verifications, and that could be through data sources or a veteran's documentation of their disability decision from the VA. And that could take weeks to provide. So having a direct integration with the VA could prevent any coverage delays or gaps and provides that data much faster and automatically. And so let me show you what that looks like. And just to state, this is just the starting point. We're establishing a pattern so we can connect to more data sources like National Student Clearinghouse, employment databases, SNAP data, etc. So let's jump in to this. Let's look at the VA API information. So I want to say, keep in mind that automation is a little bit hard to demo. But let's go through this together. So this is the VA's Lighthouse API connection information. They have some test data that we can use. So if I scroll down, I'll see like disability rating, and this is what we're using. And so there's a list of veterans with disability ratings. This is just dummy data. So I've gone through, I picked a member that might have 100% disability rating. So this is the disability rating here. They use what they call an internal controller number, ICN. It's used in place of like a social security number. So this is the VA disability information. I'm going to jump between that screen and this one right here, which is our certification request screen. This is where we manually create an API request. If you've joined us in the past, like you're probably familiar with this page, but just to reiterate for new folks, the page is manually creating a certification request or an API request for a member for a specific reporting period. This would actually happen on the back end automatically and, in large numbers. So I'll switch back and forth between these. So let's pick between these two pages. Let's pick a member who has that 100% disability rating and falls in the correct date range. So let's do Wesley Watson Ford here. I'm going to copy the ICN number. And we'll go in here. I'll do my email address just so we can see the notification come through. And it's Wesley Ford. Okay, Wesley Ford is the individual's name. Let's get their date of birth, which was 5/6/86. And we'll put in a Medicaid case number. We'll also, so this is the new field that we have available. So it's the ICN number. I'll paste that ICN number in. We'll select a region, certification date, and we'll keep everything else the same. And we'll request a certification here. If, Wesley were to log into OSCER or their member portal, they would see that they're exempt. They meet the requirements. They also do get a notification that no action is needed from them. Good news, they're excused from reporting work requirements. So let's try it with someone who doesn't meet that 100% disability rating. I think just the one above here, I'll copy this one. This is a 40%. Hopefully folks can see this. It's not very big. Um, and this person is Kenneth William Andrews. So let's go back and create a new certification request. Um, Kenneth, I think it was Williams or Andrews. And I think the date of birth was 2/20/1990. We'll pick another case number. This comes from the state. And then I pasted their ICN number. Let me just make sure I copied the right one. 142. Yep. And we'll pick today as the certification date. And again, I'll leave things, the same and request a certification. And so this, because they were at 40%, they should see, work requirements when they log in. So hi, Kenneth, and they can go through and report their work requirements. If I check the email, I would see that, Kenneth would have to, they would get the notification to report work requirements. All right. So so what you just saw is the first of what we expect to be many external data source connections. The VA integration establishes a pattern. We're looking at commercial employment verification services for income-based compliance, National Student Clearinghouse for student exemptions. And the point is, the legacy system may not be able to connect to these sources, but OSCER is. And every new data source we connect means more people verified automatically, fewer manual cases for staff, and fewer people falling through the cracks. So next, we've added single sign-on, and we'll show you how OSCER can be themed or branded to look and feel like your existing system. All right. Okay. And one of the most common concerns, we've heard from states is we don't want to introduce another system that staff and members have to learn. And it's a fair concern. So we built OSCER to disappear into your existing environment. So we'll take a look at what that looks like, and we'll walk through two scenarios here. First, we'll look at, a staff member who isn't logged in yet, and they're directed to the state's login page. They authenticate with their existing credentials, and they land in OSCER. Then we'll look at a staff member who is logged in with their state credentials. Maybe they're on the state case management site. We'll show kind of a mock site of that. Um, uh, they're already logged in and they navigate to OSCER and they're already in. There's no second login. So let's jump into that. So here, I might be a caseworker and looking at it from an eligibility worker's experience. We'll run through that first scenario. I might get a notification by email and I could click on the link and I'm redirected to my state login SSO page. So we've kind of branded something made up, state of Nava. This could be Virginia. This could be Oregon. So here I'll log in with my credentials. And it would take me to the task that I can then work. And again, I'm successfully signed in via SSO, branded like the state, however it may look, and I can work the task from there. So let's look at the second scenario. So here's a staff member. This is kind of a mock case management site that we've built out. This might be, on the state side, they have other types of tasks. So income verification, identity verification, residency verification, and they might have a task for community engagement, work requirements. Our button says review and OSCER just to make it clear for the demo purposes, but you could just say review and it would then, because they're already logged in, I'm going to click on review task in OSCER. It automatically takes them to that task. I'm in the OSCER app right now. It is branded to look like that state site. So if you notice, they didn't have to log in again. And so it just creates this frictionless experience for the staff member. Something else I just want to show as well is, um, you know, this is behind the scenes. And here I'm showing an Active Directory. This might be where administrators or supervisors see and manage roles they've defined for their staff. I'm looking at this in like AWS Cognito, but this could be any Active Directory. So it could be Azure or some other user management system that the state is using. Um, you can see groups and roles. So this could say like Oregon supervisor or Oregon eligibility worker. The point is that this would map to what we have in OSCER. So the roles flow into our identity layer and get mapped to OSCER's permission model. So just so we can see what that looks like, um, I'll look at this. I have Sumi Thividal as an administrator. I'll look in here. And as an administrator, I might add this person, add their custom region. And if I look in organization settings here, I see Sumi Vital admin added here. Again, we might have like Joe admin as an example, who is, in the East region, and this person is showing up there as well. And so when we set up the attribute-based access control, this was our intention. So the states maintain their roles the way they already do, and they have their own Active Directory that they're managing, and we respect that structure. So OSCER knows what the person is authorized to see and do. All right. So that's it for, just the single sign-on demo portion. And what you saw is just no new passwords, no new accounts. The portal looks like part of the state's system because functionally it is. OSCER is fully themable. The colors, logos, typography, all are configurable per state. So for the member-facing side, the reporting portal can match the state's existing Medicaid member portal as well. So it feels familiar to the member. So this matters because every point of friction, a new login, an unfamiliar interface, it slows down staff and it increases the chance that members disengage. And it also increases admin costs. So SSO and theming aren't just cosmetic features. They're how you can reduce friction and sustain like ease for staff and reduce those administration costs. Additional features that are new since our last demo, we won't like go into them too much, but we've added API authentication, which is foundational for any state integrating OSCER into their production environment. Every API request is signed and verified. OSCER knows exactly which state system is making the call, ensures each state can only access their own data. And that's just critical when you're running like a multi-state, multi-county platform. But it's the kind of infrastructure, this isn't like super flashy, but it's the kind of infrastructure that sets up states securely and ready for production. And we've improved our batch processing to handle high volume operations. Because, when you're processing certifications for hundreds of thousands of people, performance matters. Just key improvements, we've made around being able to load the CSV directly, keep large files from overloading the system's memory, parallel processing. So result is, you can run high volume operations faster and more reliably, which matters a lot when you're on a 6-month redetermination cycle with large populations. I won't re-demo features you've seen already, but I do want to ground you in what already exists. You know, OSCER's rules engine automatically identifies people who are exempt or already compliant based on data we use from states and externally. This happens through batch or API. For the people who do need to take action, we have a plain language exemption screener. We've tested with real Medicaid beneficiaries, you know, a simple UI for reporting activities and a case management system with reporting. And the whole system is, you know, configurable. It's low code. And we've been testing with members and prioritizing user research. So we have Mallory here, OSCA's designer researcher, and she's going to share our most recent findings. I'll stop sharing and pass to Mallory.
Thanks, Sumi.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get set up here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share Figma and kind of walk you through this month's research. So I'm Mallory Iden. I'm a designer researcher at Nava. And over the last 2 months, we've been talking to real Medicaid beneficiaries and people enrolled in other benefit programs about OSCER. And one of the benefits of open source is that this continual research allows anyone that is implementing community engagement requirements to benefit from the learnings. We post all of our findings on our GitHub that you can find in the doc section. But let's talk research. So we took our findings from last month and iterated on the homepage to see how that impacted comprehension and clarity. Our main goals for this round were to see if the homepage improvements help members understand reporting activities and exemptions better, and to also gauge people's general readiness to proceed. We tested 3 key changes. So first, the tabbed pattern, we separated reporting activities from applying for exemptions into 2 distinct tabs. We also made some tweaks around the way we present the hourly requirements. The activity table over here performed really well in our first round of research, so we expanded it to replace this previous hours left section, which got mixed results in testing. And we also added more explanation about what qualifies as an exemption and more detail about reporting activities, since participants wanted more information before they took action. Let's talk new insights. So here's what we found. Community engagement remains confusing without context. While this about reporting activities section does help, the phrase itself, on its own is still nebulous. We also made some tweaks to our document uploader, and we found that these changes, it did improve usability. Every user uploaded files successfully without any help. However, we did identify a major burden of proof gap here. So while W-2 employees found it really straightforward, self-employed participants really struggle with collecting multiple documents and then redacting sensitive information. We'll be implementing AI, automated review of documentation, or Doc AI, as we refer to it, next month, and that should help reduce this burden. But we wanted to understand where members face the most friction first in our current flow so that we can improve the user experience. And then lastly, let's move over here. So let's talk data sources and branding. So when we display hours, we've automatically calculated from the data source, or from rather the state data sources. Users don't understand where that data comes from. They don't know if it's from their employer, their initial application, or something else. This also, I think, uncovers a larger trust issue. Participants said that the site also doesn't feel like an official government portal yet. They're really looking for visual cues like state logos and branding. We have a couple opportunities. So based on our latest findings, we want to add more clarity around reporting period and requirements. Let's scroll back over here. We're going to add more contextual help for the acceptable activities, clear guidance on where that existing, state data comes from, and then direction on acceptable proof of documents. The policy terminology is confusing, but we want to empower and educate members to learn what they're doing so that if they need to come in from a different channel, like maybe they call a caseworker or staff, they know what language to use. We'll continue to just sprinkle this terminology within the member flow to make it more familiar. We also want to build more trust. So as you saw in today's demo, Sumi showed how OSCER can now be branded and themed to match each state. We're prioritizing official state or agency branding to give users that visual government, cue that they need to feel secure. And then we want to reduce the burden of proof. For self-employed users, we're going to implement document AI to assist with document naming and recognition. And then finally, we want to evolve the dashboard. We're going to continue to keep iterating on this homepage layout, evolving it into more of a quick glance dashboard that makes returning to the portal seamless and continues with any state member portals that already exist. And that's it. So thanks for your support as we dive into the next month. And you can view all the research plan and findings on GitHub. I will pass it back to Sumi.
Thank you, Mallory. Um, all right, so I won't go too much into our roadmap, but join us next month to see how we're using AI to review supporting documents and evidence to reduce member and staff burden. And just as a reminder, like our roadmap is available on GitHub, it's on our Nava site, and you can make feature requests if there's something that you don't see that you think that we should be focusing on. You can do that through GitHub. Okay, and I want to emphasize the key value OSCER delivers to states implementing HR1 requirements. You know, the first is OSCER expands that access to data. States need to verify exemptions and compliance from data sources their existing systems were potentially never designed to reach. So that's a pattern we created here so that we can continue to expand to more data sources. OSCER does the hard work of connecting to these sources once, so states don't have to solve that same integration problem. Second, it automates compliance. Again, that CBPP number of 80% resolving 80% of cases automatically, OSCER's rules engine can help get to that. This keeps staff focused on the complex cases that truly need human judgment, and it keeps eligible people covered without unnecessary administrative burden. Third, OSCER offers flexible deployment and is ready to go. You can launch a working compliance system in weeks, not months. Like OSCER adapts to the reality of your situation and the integration option that you need to start with. A headless rules engine to integrate with your modernized portal or a complete like standalone UI to start. And because it's configuration driven, policy changes don't require extensive development. And finally, OSCER bridges that legacy and modern system. States are caught between hard HR1 deadlines and their existing systems that weren't built for this necessarily. And OSCER acts as an integration layer. It sits between your existing eligibility system and the modern data sources you need. So giving you a near-term compliance solution and a foundation for incremental modernization. You don't have to replace your vendor. You can meet your deadline while building toward the future. And together, these capabilities mean states can focus on their mission, serving members rather than getting stuck in administrative complexity. So here's the timeline that matters. CMS rules come out in June. The HR1 deadline is January 2027. If you start a scoping conversation with us this month, you can have OSCER deployed and processing certifications before the CMS rules are finalized. That means when the rules land, you're not scrambling, you're iterating, you've deployed the MVP, connected to data, you started processing, and you can just start building deeper integrations from there. And that's like with or without Nava. We know every state's environment is different. So next step, like we would like to talk to you about your particular situation. Get in touch with us for a private demo to see what we can map out, to see what an MVP would look like for your state to get running in weeks. You can reach out to us at Medicaid at navapbc.com and we'll follow up with everyone on the call as well in the next few days. If you want to have a conversation with us in person, several of us from Nava will be at the Healthcare IT Connect Summit in New Orleans next week. And we'd appreciate getting a chance to meet with you directly and just sitting down and chatting. So come find us.